To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
Is connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that are shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Hello friends, a very warm welcome from Global Reach Out.
Hey everyone, do you still remember what Nehemiah did in response to the sad news of ruined city walls? That's right, he prayed to God, didn't he? And what happened? As a result, things began to turn to his favor, right? Now, in today's session, we will see how the king responded to Nehemiah's request and the beginning of Nehemiah's real challenge or obstacles. Nehemiah made his request to the monarch with submission and respect in a straightforward manner rather than using his positional power. And then as a result, the king acceded and gave him more than he requested. Obviously, he found favor with the king, right? But then the question is why? Well, possibly, it could be because he displayed good attitude and aptitude as a worker. It could also be he had done his homework and asked what he needed. But most important reason is that God answered Nehemiah's prayer. Earlier on, he had prayed to God, remember? He had prayed to God to grant him divine, but also human favor. He acknowledged later on, remember? He said, and the king granted these requests because the gracious hand of God was on me. He obtained the king's favor when he was given A, authorization, B, a set time to build, C, materials, D, escort to ensure safe conduct through the unfriendly terrain country, and E, a personal letter of introduction to the governor. The fact he completed rebuilding the walls in just 52 days in spite of obstacles informs us that he had also received divine favor. Quote, prayer secured the pagan king's favor and cooperation. It obtained the necessary supplies and protection. Prayer also endowed Nehemiah with courage and wisdom in dealing with adversaries. It is imparted to him business shrewdness and tact in adjusting problems of labor and wages. It equipped him to deal with wily and crafty officials. It afforded him peace in the midst of slander and lies. It renewed his faith and optimism. End quote by Sanders. Prayers work wonders. God can work through any king regardless of his culture or beliefs. Finding favor with authorities is important because many governments are secular in nature. Nehemiah found favor with the king because he trusted God. But was he free from problems, troubles, obstacles? Well, the obvious answer is no, he wasn't, because in Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 10, we are told that when Sanballat, the Horonite, governor of Samaria, and Tobiah, the governor of Ammon, the Ammonite official, and later Geshem too, when they heard of Nehemiah's arrival to rebuild the city gates, they were upset and they were angry. And as a result, you know what they did? They began a campaign to thwart his rebuilding effort. The question is, why? Why were Sanballat, governor of Samaria, and Tobiah, governor of Transjordan, sought to oppose the rebuilding project of Nehemiah? Why? After all, right? Think with me. After all, they worship the same God. Sanballat's son, Daliah, and Shelemiah both contain the short form. Do you know? Both names contain the short form of Yahweh. That's right. And Tobiah was a believer too. Was it not a project for the sake of the people's defense? Why? Why was it not a good thing for them, for Nehemiah, to rebuild the wall? A rebuild of the wall was a threat to the Samaritan officials who had been in charge of the land since Judah's exile. You know, the increased number of returnees made them angry. Why? Well, because they did not want the returnees taking control of the land and threatening their secure position. And perhaps, Sanballat hoped to be the governor of Judah. So the arrival of Nehemiah kind of like spoiled his plans, and he tried to frighten Nehemiah by scorn, threats, and bluffs. What did Nehemiah do? That's right. What did he do after arriving in Jerusalem? What was the first thing as a leader Nehemiah did? Well, when Nehemiah arrived at Jerusalem, this is what he did. He waited there for 3 days. That's right. He did nothing. Well, not exactly. He surveyed the ruins in the night in silence. 3 days without a word to anyone. Listen, no luncheons with the city officials, no press conferences, no guided tours around the wall, no fireworks or parade down the main streets. Only one thing: silence. But why? You may ask, why? A survey was done in the night, most probably to avoid public attention, detection, and spies who were jealous of him. What God had put in his mind, he decided not to share with too many people. Perhaps he knew the danger. Some other possible reasons include to get a first-hand view of the situation objectively and not be clouded by what others wanted him to see, or to find out who was working already and in what areas, which would give him a chance to collect his thoughts and devise a plan before plunging into the project. Now, after his survey, Nehemiah began to mobilize and motivate the people. And this is how he did it. Listen to what he said to the people. He said, "You know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. So let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace." Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. And here is what the people said. They replied to Nehemiah, "Yes, let's rebuild the wall." And so, as a result, they began the good work of rebuilding the wall. Nehemiah managed to motivate the people to help him rebuild the city walls. He presented a need, challenged them by saying, see the trouble we are in. Note the pronoun he used. That is, we, not you. And this is the art of learning to say we when it comes to leadership. Second, he persuaded them to help him, to ask for their help. He said, right, let us build up the wall of Jerusalem. Basically, Nehemiah recognized that he needed the help of the people. He couldn't do it alone. And this is a critical point in leadership. Leaders tend to forget that we are in the people business. Leaders are where they are because of the people's support. I must say, even the most gifted and talented leader is handicapped without the moral support of the people. It grieves my heart to come across some arrogant leaders who challenge the people to leave the organizations if they do not submit to the demands of the organization. Some will, while others remained because they are cowed to submission. Nehemiah also convinced them that God's favor was upon him. And he told them that the king had given the authorization. Now let me ask you, how important for you to be able to say the hand of God is upon you when you start something new? How important is it for you? How do you know God's hand is upon you? How can you be sure? Signs? By wonders? Or something out of the ordinary? Something to think about. Nehemiah managed to inspire and influence them to go along with him. And this is what leadership is all about, isn't it? Influence. That's right. Influence. You can't tell someone that you have leadership qualities if you cannot inspire, influence, motivate people to follow you. When God calls you to do something, here's the question that we need to think about. When God calls you, when God calls me to do something, is everything always smooth sailing? Well, of course, the answer is no. Because there will be detractors around. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 19 says, But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gesem, the Arab, heard of our plan, they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king? They said. Sanballat, the governor of Samaria, attempted to discourage the people and thwart the rebuilding of the broken city walls of Jerusalem. Tobiah, an Ammonite official, also mocked the rebuilding of the walls and tried to discourage the people. In the end, as Nehemiah prayed and planned, we are told that God had frustrated their plans. You see, in doing God's work or in doing good works, there will always be obstacles and opposition. There will always be a Sanballat or Tobiah who is critical, negative, discouraging, demoralizing, at times disparaging, casting aspersion on your motive, and seeking to stop your work for one reason or another. Do you know, the question is, do you know of a Sanballat or Tobiah in your life right now? If you are thinking and you are saying, no, I don't. If you do not have, I have good news for you. And that is this. You will have them sooner or later. That's right. Expect opposition and obstacles when you do God's work. That's right, my friends. Or when you do good works. Expect opposition and obstacles. Here is how Nehemiah replied to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. He said this, "The God of heaven will help us succeed. We, his servants, will start rebuilding this wall. But you have no share, no legal right, or no historic claim in Jerusalem." Now, Nehemiah's handling of the opposition or criticism is a classic example of how to do it. His reply to those who opposed his plan was this: God of heaven will help us succeed. In other words, it's like saying, you can do whatever you want to, but God will help us to succeed no matter what. What a confidence. 1 plus God equals majority. That's right. Ultimately, all success comes from God. Human beings may frustrate or hinder God's plan, but ultimately they cannot and will not stop or destroy it in the end. God, in the end, is still the champion. God is still in control and in charge. How we respond, therefore, how we respond to opposition is important. You see, you and I have a choice. You and I have a choice in life to be positive or negative. Sometimes opposition can turn out to be God's blessings and give us an opportunity to grow. Through it, we become not only a kingdom worker, but sometimes a warrior. When intimidation and innuendos come, the best resource, as we learned from Nehemiah, is prayer. Prayer followed by some soul searching. So trust God that He will vindicate you in the end rather than exacting a revenge. That, my friends, that's a better way of responding. That's how an effective leader responds. Question is, how about you? May I encourage you to take some time this week and reflect your life, your leadership, and how you respond to issues and challenges in life. And as you do, I pray that our good Lord will bless and encourage you. And I will return for session 5 right here. So be here. God bless you.
And that's this week's episode of the Effective Leadership Program, brought to you by Global Reach Out. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.